I was the first to realize we had an extra person. I counted 6 of us around a campfire, but I knew only 5 of us had set out. The 6th person must have joined us somewhere along the trail, though I couldn't pinpoint when or where. All the fire-lit faces seemed familiar, as if I'd known them my whole life. That's why it took me so long to spot the outsider. I had to examine each face one by one, tracing my history with them, recalling how we met, how I knew them, fitting each person into my memory like a puzzle piece. First, there was Mark. He sat next to Sarah, hitting on her, as usual. I met them both 6 years ago in 10th grade. Mark and I were wide receivers on the football team. Sarah was a cheerleader, and Mark had always had a crush on her. The 3 of us started hanging out after games, with Mark's relentless flirting and Sarah's hilarious rejections. Then there was Ben, my best friend since 1st grade. We'd been inseparable since we collided playing tag during recess. His arm was wrapped around his long-term girlfriend, Justine. She transferred to our school from Chicago in 7th grade. Ben sat next to her in English, and she quickly became part of our circle. She was quiet and shy at first, but once she opened up, she was one of the coolest, kindest people you could ever meet. She and Sarah had become close friends over the years. And then there was the 6th face of the piece that didn't fit. I stared at him, his name completely escaping me, if I ever knew it at all. He looked familiar, but I couldn't place him. If I recognized him, why couldn't I remember his name? Why was he sitting with us, acting like he belonged? He watched Mark and Sarah, laughing when they laughed, smiling when they smiled. I couldn't figure it out. The question burned in my mind. How had this stranger infiltrated our small group without anyone noticing? Yo, Porter! Ben's voice pulled me from my thoughts. You spacing out or something? I was just telling Justine about our 5th grade teacher. What was his name again? Mr. Smith, I said. Oh yeah, Mr. Smith. I was telling Justine how you could get under his skin like no one else. Remember that time you handed in an assignment printed in yellow ink? Ben and Justine laughed. Yeah, I remember, I said. I can still see the steam coming out of his ears. They laughed again, and I managed a half-hearted chuckle. When I glanced at the stranger, he was watching us, grinning. He was always on the periphery, observing, never participating. It was part of how he'd gone unnoticed. I was struck by the feeling that he was studying us. My skin crawled. Ben finished his beer and tossed the empty can into the cooler. Well, I gotta take a leak, he announced, disappearing into the darkness of the woods. You really know how to push people's buttons, don't you? Justine said to me. I shrugged, my mind elsewhere. The weight of the situation, the reality of it, was starting to sink in. A strange man had attached himself to our group, and who the hell knew what he wanted? Questions raced through my mind, none with answers. How had no one else noticed? Why had it taken me so long? Was I losing my mind? Did I have amnesia and just forget this one friend? What the hell was going on? The strange man stood up jerkily. I gotta take a leak, he said. It was the first time I'd heard him speak. His voice had an odd lisp, as if the words were forced from his throat. He walked with an awkward gait and vanished behind the same dark veil of trees. No one else reacted. Justine kept talking. I've always loved the bond you and Ben have. It was so hard moving and leaving all my old friends behind. I mean, I can't complain too much. I wouldn't have met Ben and all of you otherwise. Justine, don't you see what's happening? Huh, you're telling me you haven't noticed? Notice what, Porter? What are you talking about? Who was that guy? I gestured to the spot the stranger had just vacated. Oh, him, he's a... She trailed off, frowning into the fire. I could see her mind working, a flicker of concern in her eyes. I knew that I wasn't crazy. I don't know, she said finally. Who is he? That's what I'm trying to figure out. We stared at each other. Maybe Justine was cut off by an ear-piercing screech from the woods. It sounded like a large, wounded cat. The sound sliced through the night, silencing our conversations. Only the crackling campfire remained. The woods fell still. The fuck was that? Mark broke the silence. I don't know, Sarah said. I've never heard an animal make a sound like that. Sounded like some fucked up mountain lion, Justine said. You ever heard anything like that, Porter? I shook my head, adrenaline tingling in my fingers. Ben was still out there, and so was the strange man. Dread coiled in my gut. There are no mountain lions out here, Mark said. Probably just an elk. They can make some creepy noises. Sarah agreed. Justine bit her lip, her eyes scanning the treeline. It's probably fine. I think Mark's right. I told her, not entirely believing my own words. Mark and Sarah had resumed their conversation when a strange man stumbled out of the woods. They paid him no mind. I had hoped something would have clicked for them by now, but they remained oblivious. The strange man grabbed a beer from the cooler. He fumbled with it, struggling with the tab as if he'd never opened a can before. When he finally got it open, he sat down, beer in hand, and continued to watch Mark and Sarah with a thin smile. He never took a sip. I watched him from across the fire, his head wavering in the heat haze. It wasn't just that he'd infiltrated our group that made me uneasy. He moved with a jerky, awkward motion like a newborn foal. Nothing he did seemed smooth or practiced. It made his every action feel like an imitation, a performance. I didn't make the connection then, but I should have realized this man wasn't entirely human. At that moment, I just thought he was a freak. I considered confronting him, right then and there. I wanted to ask him what the fuck he was doing. But I admit I was scared. I pictured him as some horrific serial killer, and I didn't know how dangerous he was or if he was armed. I didn't want to provoke him into doing something that would get us all killed. As time ticked by with no sign of Ben, I became convinced the stranger had done something to him. I watched him, convinced he was plotting, planning, marking his next target. Anger began to bubble up through my fear. I had to stop him. The axe we used for firewood was leaning against my seat. This man was dangerous, I was sure of it. I had to do something before one of us was next. I clutched the axe's smooth wooden handle, its weight reassuring in my hand. Justine touched my arm. "Porter, where's Ben? I'm getting nervous." "It's okay," I lied, patting her hand. "I'm sure he's fine." I stood, axe in hand. "I'm going to get more firewood," I announced, more awkwardly than I'd intended. "Okay, Dumark said." "Porter." Justine's voice trembled. Speaking up was a mistake. I had drawn the stranger's attention. I walked past him, trying to act casual, but I've never been a good actor. He watched me the entire way. His glare followed me as I reached the edge of the woods. When I glanced back, his head had rotated an unnatural distance to keep his eyes on me. A chill shot down my spine. I was hoping he would look away, give me an opening, but he never did. I'm not sure what happened next. I never saw him stand up. I never saw him move a muscle. But in an instant, he was standing right in front of me, inches from my face. It was like he teleported. A metallic smell, like blood and copper, stung my nose. The axe trembled in my hand. Any thought of using it vanished. I was frozen, my skin covered in goosebumps. A powerful energy radiated from him. "Get some firewood," he said in that forced, lispy voice, and then he smiled, a wide, unsettling grin. At that exact moment, Ben emerged from the woods. "Ben!" Justine cried out. "Jesus," Ben said as Justine hugged him tightly. "Did you guys hear that cat thing?" "We think it was an elk," Mark said. "Where were you? What took you so long?" Justine asked. "I guess I wandered too far and lost sight of the fire. Took me a minute to find my way back. For a second there, I thought I was going to have to freeze my ass off alone tonight." Relief washed over me in a wave, relaxing every muscle. At least Ben was safe. I looked for the strange man, but he was gone. He had slipped away while I was distracted. He was good at going undetected. My thoughts turned to getting out of there. Even with Ben safe, that guy was still a threat. I started back, toward the group, catching the middle of their conversation. "I don't know, actually. Yeah, who was that guy?" Ben was saying. "I thought he was with you," Sarah said. "Yeah, isn't he your friend?" Mark added. "I thought he drove up with you three." "No," Ben said. "I have no idea who he is." Panic spread across their faces. They were finally feeling what I'd been feeling. The realization had finally set in. "We need to get out of here," I said. "Before he comes back." "Yes, please," Justine said. "We have to leave now. That guy was a freak. Right, Porter?" "Yeah," I said. I told them how I'd noticed he was the odd one out. I described his strange behavior, and they all agreed he was weird and possibly dangerous. None of us could pinpoint when he had joined us. He had slipped in unnoticed and unaccounted for. It was uncanny. We packed our tents in record time and trekked the 15 minutes back to our cars through the dark woods, our flashlights cutting through the blackness. We heard the screech of the elk again, if it was an elk, which I now doubt, and took some comfort that it sounded farther away. Still, we quickened our pace. I finally felt like I could relax behind the wheel of my locked SUV. Justine and Ben were in the back, and Mark and Sarah followed in Mark's beat-up Ford Laser. We were heading out of the woods, planning to find a motel for the night before driving home in the morning. I thought we were in the clear. We navigated the dark, winding roads that snaked through the forest. A smile spread across my face when we finally reached the exit road, an arrow straight stretch of asphalt cutting through the last few miles of woodland. I pressed down on the accelerator. I couldn't wait to get out of there, and Mark must have felt the same because he was right on my tail. I remember thinking we'd have a strange story to tell after this. I had no idea it was about to become a horror story. The trees and the dashed lines on the road blurred into a single streak. My headlights stretched into the endless road, and my speedometer crept toward 100 miles per hour. I don't know what possessed me to drive that fast, and I wish Mark hadn't followed my lead. It was a fatal mistake. The strange man stepped out from behind a tree, right into the middle of my lane. I slammed on the brakes. It was too late. The next few seconds played out like a nightmarish slideshow. The tires shrieked, the smell of burning rubber filling the air. The strange man folded over my hood and was sent flying down the road, skating across the pavement on his back with such speed he looked like he was gliding on ice. More screeching tires. Mark swerved into the opposite lane, his car fishtailing wildly. He fought for control, and for a second I thought he had it, but the car hooked right straight into the trees. The sickening crunch of metal echoed through the air. Mark's car slammed into a tree, driver's side first, sending shards of glass and metal flying. The car bounced off one tree and into another. This time, the front passenger side took the impact. The headlight exploded, and the passenger side caved in, sending a wheel careening into the woods. The crumpled wreck came to a rest. Justine was the first one out of the car, screaming Sarah's name. Ben ran after her, and I followed. Everything felt surreal, my body numb with shock. It was like watching a movie. I felt like I was floating over the asphalt as Justine and Ben sprinted toward the steaming wreckage, the scene dimly lit by my SUV's one remaining headlight. There are two screams I'll never forget. They are imprinted on my brain, and their echoes will haunt my nights forever. If I get Alzheimer's in my old age, I know the last thing I'll remember will be those screams. The first was my mother's when I was 13. It flooded our house, bouncing off the walls. I ran from my room to find her crumpled at the front door, two police officers standing over her. They had just told her that my older brother was dead. The second came from Justine when she saw what was waiting for us in that Ford Laser. Mark was unrecognizable, a shattered mess of bone, skin, and blood, twisted and melded with the crumpled steel. Sarah was blinking slowly, her breathing labored. One of her arms was shattered, broken in too many places to count. Her legs were crushed from the knees down by the car's dashboard, which had been forced back into her space. Her legs would have been flat if I could have seen them. Justine turned away and fell to her knees, her face buried in her hands, her shoulders heaving. Ben tried to comfort her, but had to turn away and vomit on the side of the road. I pulled out my phone, my fingers shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. My voice was small and distant as I explained what happened to the operator. She told me to stay on a line, but when I looked down the road, I dropped my phone. The strange man was standing there. He was grinning from ear to ear, showing a full set of teeth. His shoulders shrugged up and down as if he were laughing. The fucker was laughing. If I hadn't been in shock, I would have gone after him right then and there. I would have torn his heart, if he even has one from his chest. But all I could do was stare, mouth agape, fighting back tears. The strange man started for the woods. I watched him go, and I watched him change. I saw it. I know I did. It was no illusion, no trick of the mind. It was real. I saw him shapeshift. I saw its true form. We weren't dealing with anything human that night. After countless hours of research, I believe what I saw is what some people call the goat man. Horns grew unevenly from its head. Its grinning snout bared rows of sharp teeth. Walking upright, with the same awkward gait, it vanished into the shrouded woods. It's been 8 months since that night. I've only seen my friends a handful of times. Our relationships are shattered, left in ruins. Now, all we are to each other is a stark reminder of that night. Mark is dead. Sarah survived, but as a triple amputee. Justine and Ben broke up. And I'm here, with a scraggly beard and uncut hair, having spent every sleepless night researching the monstrosity I saw the Goat Man. I'm going back to those woods. So help me God, I'm going back. I'm coming for the Goat Man. And I'm not stopping until one of us is dead.